everybody. Welcome to another edition of Betsy Freeman Booking Live. I've got 3 new guests this week, and we're going to talk about a topic that we have never spoken about before, which is parenting and specifically patient parenting. I think among the 3 of you, you have 8 children altogether. We'll find out. I'll let you all introduce yourselves and tell us about a little bit about your life as a parent, where you're coming from, and about your kids. Claire, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Betsy. I'm Claire Finnk. I'm streaming from Los Angeles today, and I have 3 kids, a 5-year-old boy named Taz, a 3-year-old girl named Elise, and a 1-year-old baby girl named Isabella.
Noël.
Hi, I'm Noël. I am in Baltimore currently. I have 3 kids. My oldest son is going to be 13 this month. I can't believe I'm about to be the parent of a teenager. And then another boy who is 11 and a daughter who is 9. And I don't think I even told you this, Betsy, but we have been foster parents. About half a decade ago, we had a couple of teenagers in our house. So parenting from multiple sides.
Wow, that's awesome. Nicole.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Nicole Shipman, and I'm in Santa Monica, California. I have a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old son. So I'm in the thick of boy energy.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Well, thank you all again for being here. You wrote some really great questions about patient parenting, and it's something that I am really curious about. I don't have kids, but I just always like watch y'all and wonder how you do it every day. So first question is, what tactic do you use to stay patient when your children are pushing your buttons or actively trying to annoy you? Claire?
Oh, it's a hard one. So I have one kid that does that a lot. And so far it's extremely hard to do, but the best tactic I have is to ignore it. So there's just zero payoff for that kind of behavior. But I mean, they can try to go far, so it's hard. But so far that works the best.
It turns into a little bit of a battle of wills. Noël?
So I think that the journey that I am on is learning, as one of my amazing mentors, Nikki Lerner, says, that the best gift I can give is a whole and healthy version of myself. So I know that when my nerves start to fray, I become the thing that I dislike in others, if that makes sense. And so what I'm learning and practicing more and more is when I feel myself getting to that point where I'm starting to get like sarcastic and short-tempered and caustic with my kids, is like, I need a timeout. Mommy needs to go take care of herself and be unavailable. And so to just go to some place that's quiet and to get myself together, because the more reserves I have, the less likely I am to react in a way that I'm going to regret 5 minutes later. So that's the practice that I'm working on. I can't say as I'm successful all the time, but it's the direction that I desire to head on that one.
Makes sense. Thank you. Nicole?
I just want to start off by saying I'm not exactly the most patient parent, but I am working on it, and I'm, 6 years later, since my first child was born, I'm getting slightly better at it. I would say my biggest thing that I do that helps me is breathing, like deep belly breaths, and that just kind of brings all the oxygen into my cells, and just it's so beneficial, and it's just so easy to do. It helps me come down a notch. And the other thing that I do that's more active is my 6-year-old likes to physically annoy, so like kind of keep touching or keep getting in your face. And I like to say to him, oh, I don't really like that, but I do like it when you give me hugs or kisses instead. So I'm trying to give it a more positive thing. So, I do like you around me, but I would prefer if I prefer you to touch my body in a way I like, instead of, pestering or whatever.
That's good. I like that a lot. Alrighty. What since you already touched on this a little bit, what is your favorite thing to do for self-care during your day or week, Claire?
I have a meditation practice that I do every day, and I really think it's important. I feel a lot more centered and grounded, and just have that restful time to myself during the day. And I'm not a napper at all, so this is just the closest I can get to giving my body a break. So my kids do a quiet time during the day for 1 hour, and that is my time, and I do my meditation, and then I caffeinate for energy for the rest of the half of the day with them. They're all three in the same room, and my husband is sometimes like, they're not gonna all sleep in there. They're riling each other up. I'm like, yes, but you don't understand. This quiet time's for me. It's not for them. This is for me, so that I have that little, break in the day. And I try and do it like after lunchtime. That's kind of when I need to regroup and get ready for the second half. So I do think it's really helpful. I do 25 minutes, and I feel like that's doable every day. Like anything more than that, I wouldn't be able to fit it in consistently. So making it a smaller increment of time has been helpful.
That's cool. And then what is that meditation like?
I do something similar to a transcendental meditation with a mantra. I do 20 minutes of meditation, and then I do 3 minutes of visualizing, and the last 2 minutes is just gratitude. And I feel really good after.
All right. Noël?
This has been such a huge question for me this year. So when my kids all went back to school, I went back to the classroom, and on top of that, I'm worship leading. And then 2 years ago, I started a master's degree. And so when the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden I had 3 kids home full time with me while working 2 jobs that doubled in size, plus trying to finish a master's degree, I thought like, this year is going to be hard. But like when you can see the tidal wave coming, like I could see this one coming, like this is going to be a lot. And so I started like like right after everything shut down in like March of 2020 in this area, like talking to people that I respect and honor in my life that I knew were going to need to look in on me and make sure that I'm not going off the deep end. And one of them said to me, this will be a season for aggressive self-care. And I loved that image, because it's like, this is not like this is like how to stay afloat in the massive storm, And so one of the things that I grieved so much was the loss of the stuff that I love the most. Like I do aerial silks, and that's like my like away time and climb, and like and all the gyms in our area closed, and not just like temporarily for the pandemic, like we can't sustain this during nobody can come in. So like losing that was huge. So finding other things, getting out in nature and climbing. I kind of started at the beginning of the school year, like Saturday was sacred. Like we would put nothing on the calendar on Saturday, because I work Sundays through Fridays, so like absolutely nothing. Like it didn't matter how big of an event it was that somebody asked us to, or how important it was. It's like, I have to have this sacred time. And often would like, take a matcha tea out to the bridge and climb, or when the weather was good, go swimming or hike or something. But that time of solitude and getting out of a house where we were all day, every day, the same 5 of us in the house all the time, was a really big deal. So on the one hand, I lost a lot of things that were like my consistent self-care, but on the other hand, I feel like what I gained this year was a sense of rhythm where I and accountability on all sides, where I could never go to that place where I was starting to sink, if that makes sense. Whereas like as soon as I felt it, it's like intervention. So yeah, I don't know if that exactly answered the question, but that's how my year has been.
That's good. That sounds like fun, taking a matcha out to the bridge. All right, Nicole, self-care.
I definitely understand what you're saying, Noelle, about the pandemic and about it being a lot harder to do the things that you normally did. I think that during this time in the pandemic, going out into nature has been really important for me and like a necessity. So whether it's taking my boys out to hike all together or going for a hike by myself, or even just a walk around the neighborhood. If I feel myself getting really, anxious or upset or something, I have to go take a walk. So if my husband's home, I'm able to just go for a 30-minute walk around the neighborhood and I instantly feel better. So yeah, just trying to take that time by myself or get my body moving really helps.
100%. I discovered a park down the street not too long ago, and it's beautiful. And there are a bunch of fresh blackberries out there right now. So it was actually really, really just so nice. I felt so much saner just spending some time out there. Alrighty. What is the number one thing that makes you lose your patience when parenting? All right, we'll mix it up a little bit and go to Nicole first this time.
Okay, so there's definitely more than one thing that drives me nuts, but I think the one that's the biggest one is when we're pressed for time. So we're running late, or my parking meter is going to run out, or wherever we are and the stakes are high, because we have to get there or whatever. And my kids refused to put their shoes on, or they refuse to leave the playground, or they don't want to go where we're going and they just sit on the ground. That drives me nuts because I'm like, let's go, we have to go.
That's hard.
So that would be my number one thing.
Noelle, how about you?
Interrupting drives me bonkers. And we have like a high ADHD house, meaning, when I say that, I mean all 5 of us have been diagnosed, both parents and all 3 kids. So interrupting is like a really like common behavior that's associated with that. And so it's like incessant in our household. And when I come up with a solution for it, I'll let you know.
That is really hard. It's a hard discipline. I've been called out on it a few times too, and I feel terrible. I don't even realize that I'm doing it. It's just sort of like my brain is like, if I don't say this, I'm not going to remember to say it later. but it's rude, and that's why I have it in the rules for this show. Try not to interrupt people, because it really is so nice when you can get your full sentence out. Claire.
Whining. That's my biggest. It's like nails on a chalkboard. I just can't handle the sound of it. And most of the time when the whining occurs, it's about nothing important. And that makes it worse for some reason. Like, why are you whining about that? Yeah. But I just find that hard to handle. It does get better with age though. Like my oldest has pretty much grown out of the whining. It's been replaced by some other irritating behaviors, but they're less irritating than that.
Well, that's good. Well, that shows they're growing up then. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's, some light at the end of the tunnel that some of the whininess is a phase and they will grow out of it. And
that's right.
That's hopeful.
All right. And okay, so this is sort of along the same line since Nicole brought this up too. How do you stay patient when your child is blatantly ignoring you? Nicole?
So my kids don't necessarily, I don't know if they're not at the age, they don't really like ignore what I'm saying necessarily, but they will just like, they're stubborn. They'll be stubborn and they'll just, not do what I'm asking. So, I try to stay calm and I say, okay, if you don't get your shoes on right now, or if we don't, do whatever that we need to do right now, you're going to have a consequence. And, so we have our revolving list of consequences, like no video time or no treats today, a timeout or whatever. So I do the old threat of consequence.
And that helps?
Yeah, with my kids, it usually does. I mean, it's not an immediate fix, but it gradually gets them, nervous about their consequence of no video time for the day or whatever. So
That's a hard life without video time.
yeah, I know.
Noël?
So one thing that I learned when we were doing actually when we were in foster care training, because we were in high need foster care training, and a lot of behaviors come at you with that stuff. One of the things I learned in that training was to name the behavior, because so often the habit or the instinct is to engage the behavior, or to respond to what's being said, and like you can go down that rabbit trail forever. But to just be able to say, that was ignoring, here's the consequence, and then turn around and walk away. And then I haven't allowed myself to get into that place of excited nervous system where I am being a part of the amplification or escalation. And the funny thing that I've found for me is that the act of actually figuring out what the behavior is and naming it is like such a calculated and anti-emotional thing that it removes me from it, and like I'm not personally stuck in it anymore, if that makes sense. So I mean, that will probably be an answer to a lot of my following stuff too, but to just say that was ignoring, here's the consequence, turn around and walk away. That has helped me a lot in that stuff, to just disengage and not get entangled myself, if that makes sense.
That sounds good. That sounds important. There.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, Noël, that I think the best thing to do is not to engage it, because then it does become that power struggle where I'm not going to do what you said, or yes, you are going to do, so I definitely do the walk away strategy as well. And I'm trying to not do as many consequences. I've been structuring our routines kind of in a when-then format, and that has eliminated the need for a lot of consequences. So I don't have to say, if your bed's not made, then I'm doing this. I do, when you've brushed your teeth and your bed is made and your toys are picked up, then you can join us for breakfast. That's it. I don't have to say anything else. And then I just go downstairs, and when they've done it, they'll come down. I don't have to say, if you don't do that, you won't get whatever. And it doesn't always work, but it does work the majority of the time. And if a when then isn't appropriate, like I don't have a good then, because they have to care about the then, or it doesn't work. If I don't have that, I do an either or. Either you stop doing that, or we'll go home. And then you have to follow through. You just walk away. On the when then, I just leave. There's nothing else to it. Either it's done and they join us, or it's not and they don't. Or, and the either or, whatever the or is, you have to act on it. But I had an issue with my son a couple of weeks ago, and when I enacted the consequence, he was really tantrumy about it for a long time, like an hour. It was so long. And today, a very similar thing happened. So, I mean, the behaviors get better, but they'll happen again. A similar thing happened. And when I enacted the consequence, he was upset about it and did the same kind of thing, but for 3 minutes. I timed it. And I was like, okay. So he knew it wasn't going to do anything. So he wasn't going to waste his time doing it for an hour. He did it for 3 minutes. He made his point.
That's good. That sounds like progress.
That's been working. Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay. Well, then you kind of already.
Like all of it's such a process, and there's forward momentum and setbacks, and that's how it is.
Yeah. All right. So you kind of already answered this a little, so I'll let you handle it first, but the other gals may have something to say about this too. How do you handle incessant whining?
Whining. I make sure that they know that I've heard them. So you're upset that you can't bring another dolly. I totally understand. Is that what you're trying to say? You really want to bring another one? I hear you. I get it. And that sometimes stops it. That just that they've been heard, that their feelings are validated. You're really sad that you can't have that. I'm sorry. That must feel bad. That sometimes works. And then if it just keeps going on, I'll just say, I hear you. I've given you my answer. I'm sorry you're disappointed about it. If you ask me again, you're going to have to go into your room until you're ready to join us, because you can't, they can't destroy everyone else's environment. I think, keeping a peaceful environment in your home is important. And if one person is destroying the energy of the room for everyone else, then they can be removed. And it's not a timeout. You're not in trouble. You're entitled to be sad. But if you want to keep saying that, you can say it in here. And when you're done, come out. And that's been working, because then, if it's muted whining, it's a lot easier than the really loud whining.
Definitely just tamp it down just a little bit. Noël, incessant whining.
Yeah, so I had two that I don't remember ever really making a whiny sound, and then one that it was a lot of that. And we're fortunately like well past that. But I mean, like neurologically, there's like a place where that exists, and it's like different for every kid in the development. But a couple of things. One is the phrase asked and answered. So you asked and I answered, and that's the last thing I say about it. But with knowing that like this specific child is probably further off the neurotypical spectrum than even the rest of the family, I realized at some point that I don't think that she was aware that she was doing it. It was like such a gut reaction. And so I was in Feldenkrais training at the time, which is all like somatics, like awareness through movement, and just the idea of neuroplasticity beginning in awareness. So like finding what you're doing. And so I used to ask her when she started to make those sounds, can you say that again exactly like you just said it? And like she'd hear herself the second time, because she didn't hear herself the first time, and then I'd start to make a game out of it. Could you do that a little higher pitched? Could you make that last word last a little longer? Because it's like as soon as she became aware of the physiological response her body was having, it was like laughable to her. Do you know what I mean? Because it was no longer like this gut reaction to a thing that she couldn't have that she wanted, but it was like she was suddenly aware of like the sound that was emanating from her own body. So that was like a kind of weird game that like had kind of amazing ramifications that we've used for a lot of things. And then the last thing that I was thinking as you were talking was saying, I wish I could give you that, because just having that like that feeling of empathy, I wish we could stay 10 minutes longer, but we can't. It's like all of a sudden she feels like validated in her desire, but also knows it's over, So yeah, I think those were my three things that I felt like really worked. But again, like I'm really glad that we've grown out of that. It was not my most favorite phase, and it does like there's just those neurological milestones you hit where it's just like it turns off just as quickly as it turned on.
Interesting. Nicole.
Well, I'm glad to hear that they turn off eventually and that they're neurological. My tactic is similar to Claire's, where if they completely repeat over and over and whine, I usually say, okay, I understand. I heard that you did that, or I heard that you want that. I know, I understand, but we can't, or whatever. So it's quite similar to Claire's. It doesn't always work 100% of the time, but it generally, I think once they feel like they're heard, it does help.
That's good. All right. This is all fascinating stuff. Okay. What is your strategy for tantrums? This might be a little too similar to the previous question, but do you have anyone have anything that they want to add to that?
I will throw in, when we had teenagers in our house that had grown up through substantial trauma, they were neurologically frozen in the developmental phase where they were. So like, even though I had like a 14-year-old, very often the tantrums would come out like a 5-year-old. And so given his size, we had to be able to create safety for like my kids were 1, 3, and 4. And we had, a kid that's like, so safety became like a really high priority in those spaces. And so being able to clear the area and create space around it, and like, you can tantrum, but we're not going to engage. And when you're done, whatever you've destroyed is your responsibility kind of situation, but making sure that everybody else was not in a space where they were also receiving the trauma that was being output, if that makes sense. But yeah, the same kind of, I mean, otherwise I'd say the same kind of stuff that's dealing with whining is the same kind of thing is happening with tantrums. Yeah, I think that there are times when there are kids who don't have a tool to get themselves out of it when they feel out of control of themselves. And yeah, awareness games. I actually read a story from another foster parent who said when they had a teen that would tantrum, they actually made like judges paddles that had like 1 through 10, and the family would all just hold up a sign. Like this was a 9.5 because it was, again, the way to disengage and create awareness around it. Like, are you aware that you're having a tantrum? Probably not. Probably a kid's not aware that they're having it as they're having it. So some kind of external thing that is like non-emotionally engaged, but that brings awareness to the fact that it exists, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's good. Anyone else?
Can I ask you a question about that, Noël? Did you ever run into him leaving the safe space? Because I've been kind of running into that a little bit of, okay, here's your space, and if you need to kick it out, yell, whatever, to feel better, that's fine. And what do you do if they leave it? If they, like, if he had left the room that you put him in and just started coming in where your 3 younger children were, did that ever happen?
Yes, and actually, as opposed to trying to control his behavior, I just remove the rest of it. There's times that we would be followed, or that he'd but so often it's like in that space, if you're not getting the reaction, like that heightened state of like nervous system response expects a reaction that escalates, and when it's just not there, it starts to diffuse. But I do remember like one time actually putting my 3 kids in a car and leaving and being like, I don't know what kind of house I'm gonna have when I get back, but like, we don't need to be a part of this. Which there was only one time that I really remember that happening. But for the most part, I just felt like it was even more of like an emotional removal than even a physical removal. But sometimes we had to do the physical removal, and I've had that situation in I've taught in some kind of rough environments. I've had that situation with kids in classrooms too. And I know there's like a lot of controversy over the whole clear the room because like personal stuff gets destroyed and whatever. But I really think that when kids have a tool to know how to control that degree of trauma response, it's almost a relief. And that so many kids just don't have. They have no idea what to do when they're that out of control of themselves. So I think there's a lot of like social emotional learning that goes into that, and even just like mindfulness training, but like the training has to happen in the non-trauma moment to be available in the trauma moment, if that makes sense. Did that answer your question at all? I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I try and do the training about it in the non-trauma moments also, just because they're not available to hear it. They can't process it yet. So I feel like the next day we'll say, the behavior yesterday really wasn't acceptable, what was going on, and then take it from there. When in a calm moment and by themselves, I try and make sure that it's just me and whoever was having the tantrum, and not in front of siblings, or even in front of their dad. I tell my husband everything he knows, but I don't want to feel like they're being embarrassed in front of other people.
Yeah, and I will add to that, like, yes, absolutely, because the brain isn't even available to the learning cannot happen. Like, you don't form new neural pathways when you're in a fight or flight state. And kids that have had tons of trauma are like living in that state, in that excited state, like almost all the time, but like in our family, for instance, like this past year when we homeschooled, which was a very unexpected, like, whoa, all this time with my kids, this is awesome. But we spent the first half hour of every day doing what we just called centering. And it was different every day. Maybe yoga, maybe meditation, maybe we'd pull out the singing bowls, but just so my kids have a practice available to them so they can grab that tool. And now they're bigger, right? I mean, I never tried this when they were tiny. I don't know. You guys try it. Let me know if it works. But just so that like just so that self-awareness, that inner observer starts to build in like a very consistent space when there's not the disaster happening, then in the moment and it changes me. Like I feel like I live different when I'm in that space. And like I feel the value in my own life, and the more I feel that value in my own life, the more I'm able to give it to somebody else, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. All righty. Anything else you want to add about strategy for tantrums, especially when they're about something really small? We can go into the next one. All right. Next one is about questions. How many questions can you answer before you feel like you're going to lose your mind? How do you encourage curiosity and still set boundaries for yourself? Nicole, are your kids big into questions?
Yeah, my 6-year-old is getting into that stage of question after question. And I don't really know the right thing to do here, but what I've been doing is I will say, okay, I'm not able to answer any more questions right now, but in a little bit I can, or let's talk about it later. Something like that, just so that, you know, he knows that I'm not just, you know, pushing him aside, but that I just need a little break and then we can talk about it later. Because I do want him to be curious and, you know, ask things. So that's what I do.
Absolutely. All right. Noël?
I love this question. I think it's fabulous. I kind of miss that phase when my kids are in the sponge phase where they're just like absorbing all knowledge around themselves. So I kind of loved it, but I do remember the times when I hit the wall. And I pretty much what you just said, I'd say mommy's brain cannot answer one more question right now, but try me again and then I give them a time so that they know when they could come back. But we're all nerds, like we're such an academic household, and I think some of my most favorite things are when my kids would just be like, Mom, how come the sun looks like it's following us but the trees don't while we're driving? Mom, how come that's and we just got to dig in together. Well, gee, I don't know, let's look it up, like we just had so much fun learning together. And I think that I appreciate their sense of wonder, and I love remembering my own sense of wonder and refinding it with them. And I think that's the space where I try to encourage the curiosity, is to just like wonder together. And and to when my brain can't handle anymore, just say it like that. You're not the problem. My brain has shut down and I need a break. And I'll be back in 25 minutes.
That's good. Claire?
I saw a meme recently of Yoda, and it said, now that I'm a parent, I really understand this scene where Yoda got so sick of Luke Skywalker's questions that he just died. And I laughed so hard. I was like, oh my God, this meme just like sees me today. Yeah, I think the only time it's annoying is when they're asking questions just to ask them, like they're questions they already know the answers to. That's when I'm like, well, you know that already. But I'm finding now that they're asking me, I mean, they ask some big questions. I don't know how to answer them. Like Taz asked me the other day, like, how did the world get here? Like, how are we all here? I'm like, well, Taz, no one knows. This is one of life's great mysteries. And then I explained the Big Bang Theory to him. I told him how some people believe God created it all. Some people believe like every theory I could think of. And I was like, and then when you're a grown-up, you can decide for yourself what you believe. But the answer is, I don't know, and no one else knows either. They're just following what they think to be the truth, but nobody knows. I'm getting a lot of real deep questions now that I don't know what to do with.
Okay, can I ask, have you ever just asked back, like, what do you think? Sometimes I find when I ask my kids, well, how do you think the world got here? Sometimes the answers that they give are so profound. I'm like, whoa, I just learned something. You know what I mean?
Man, I wish I had asked him. Like for that question in particular, I wish I had asked him, because they do come up with, I sometimes I will ask them if there's a repeated bad behavior, like that, what we've been doing isn't working. What do you think we should do to fix it? And like the stuff they come up with is so funny and not anything that I would have enacted, but
That's awesome.
that's a great idea to ask it back to them. I love that.
Awesome. Alrighty. How do you handle sibling squabbles, especially on days when they seem to fight about everything? Sarah, you want to take that one first?
I think this is again like some of the same tactics. I ignore it so that they have the opportunity to work it out for themselves, unless it's getting like super out of hand. And then I stay close enough to hear what's going on, and I will take time for training later. So afterwards, if I notice that one kid is screaming every time the other kid does something, then I'll say, I notice when something gets taken from you, you freak out and start screaming. Another way to handle it would be to say, I was playing with that toy. Can I have it back? And then we role play, and I'll take something from her and see, and she'll practice it. And then, we role play a lot of things, and they love that. It's like a game, but it's also a training tool. I think taking time for training is big. And I think, with relationships and sibling squabbles, like those are big topics that a lot of adults have problems with, like how to peacefully resolve an argument. So I think some of that's just going to take time and lots of training. And we've been trying to work on just I feel statements and things like that. I feel sad when you take that from me. Please give it back. Even if you're upset, you can still use manners. But in the moment when they're fighting, I feel like it doesn't help anything. And if I didn't get the entire argument, then they just blame each other. I didn't do it. She did it. Who did, and I don't know what happened. So
That's a lot to try to referee all that. Noelle.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have ideas. Help! We're like in the phase of all puberty and pre-puberty, and the amount of like we already have the spiking disproportionate emotional responses of the ADHD side of things, but when you put like fresh testosterone in that, God help us all. I don't know. It's this has been quite the adventure. I feel like I am trying to teach what you were just talking about in terms of like the relational components, but they're not neurologically ready. It doesn't work the same way in that brain as it does in my brain. And I feel like it's the thing that I'm struggling the most with and have the least useful answers. We've talked through like personality and understanding how we all come at different things differently. We've talked about perspective. We use the I feel and the I want and it's not that they're not learning that stuff, and I'm sure that foundationally it's going to work out great. It's just that, like, how many times a day? A dozen times a day? 2 dozen times a day? How many times a day can we fight? I don't know. We're going to see if we can set the world record, and then I'll let you know.
I'm sorry. Yeah, God be with you, Nicole.
The phase that I'm at right now with my 4-year-old and 6-year-old is when they fight, it becomes very physical very quickly. So there's hitting involved or pushing or, some sort of bodily contact, and one will get mad at the other one for touching him. And so what we're trying to implement right now is, Dan said stop. So that means you have to stop touching him or, stop that behavior that he asked you. Just because, we want him to know that if someone says stop, you've got to stop touching them or, move away from their body. So that's what we've been trying to deal with now. And as far as them just like screaming and going at each other, we usually just have to separate them. And then, once they're calm, try to talk about our feelings or whatever. But yeah, that physical thing with like the hitting and stuff has been the biggest issue, I guess.
Do you feel like a referee as a boy mom? Do you feel like you just need a whistle? I feel like that
Yes.
a lot.
Yes, all the time. I feel like a lot of times I'm saying, boys, stop fighting, or, don't hit your brother. Um, you know, and then, my older son, even though someone says stop touching me, he doesn't. He continues. So it's like, this broken record of trying to teach him consent, basically. So, yeah.
Well, kudos to you. Keep on keeping on. Yeah, it'll sink in eventually. All right. Yeah. All right. And this is our last question today. How do you handle back talk? Claire, you want to take this one first?
Ooh, I don't know. Maybe Noel will have more advice on this. Back talk, I find that to be one of the hardest parenting things, because I don't know where it comes from. My son, my two girls don't do that, but and one's not even talking yet, so we'll see, I guess. But my son will do it. It's not all the time, but when he does, I just don't know where it came from. Like that's when I'm like, I need to look at all of your TV shows and what are your friends talking about? And because I just feel like we have a really loving home, and like my husband treats me like a queen. He would never talk to me like that. So I feel like he's not getting that behavior modeled to him. I don't know. It comes out of nowhere. But we've been doing the rewind. Like if he says something in a rude way, just say rewind. And then most of the time he'll say it again in a nice way. He's rewind. Can I do that, please? And he'll switch it. So he knows.
Yeah, my parents
But
used
maybe
to take,
it's like
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Noel, maybe it's what you were talking about before, the making them aware of it. I hadn't really thought about that in terms of the rewind until you said that, but that's basically what the rewind is. Like, do you realize how you just said that to me? And when I say rewind, I think he realizes, oh, I just say that in a really rude way. And it's like bringing awareness to that. And I don't know if every time he realizes that he said it in a disrespectful way, because he'll fix it right away.
That's good. That's a great way to handle it. Yeah, my parents used to take away my Calvin and Hobbes books because I thought that was maybe the source of some of my back talk. But I knew where they were and I could get them back. All right, Nicole, are you dealing with this too?
Yeah, my older one, my 6-year-old, is starting to say, rude things back to me when I tell him something. And usually what I do is just say, hey, that really hurts my feelings, or, that's not a very nice way to talk to me. Because, I don't really want him to talk to me that way. And I don't want anyone to talk to me that way. So, I just kind of let him know that that's not very nice. And, ask him if there's a nicer way he could say it, or, just kind of let him know what he's doing and to think about it, I guess.
Noël?
Yeah, the first thing that I thought when I read this question is, every time one of my kids goes, but mom, I go, did you just call me but mom? And usually when I say that to them, it's like all of a sudden they're like, whoa,
Awesome.
But I say that a lot. Did you call me but mommy? But I think that, so there's a guy who's like a brilliant relationship counselor named Dr. Richard Marks, and he is actually one of the places where I got like the list of how to identify the behavior, because sometimes, especially when you get like we're in middle school now, I got 2 middle schoolers, right? When we get into that like that like manipulation and the sarcasm and like all that kind of stuff that like comes with, oh, I know where they get it, I teach in their schools, like that, to be able to really pinpoint that and say, can you try that again without, can you say that again without manipulation? Can you say that again without sarcasm? Can you say that again without condescending? And I think exactly what Claire was just saying, like to foster the awareness of what the thing is, because I remember so often as a child, my mom, when I was in the middle school phase, saying to me, that's enough of the attitude. And I didn't even, like, I'd be like, what attitude? What is she even talking about? And I wish that somebody had said to me, and I have wonderful, amazing parents. This is like not at all a knock on my mother. It's like one of the few things that I remember being like, I don't know that I'm being bad. Why is everybody talking to me like I'm being bad? And to be able to like pinpoint what the specific thing is and then have a chance to do it without, I wish I'd had that. And so when I read that in his book, I was like, that's what I want to give my kids. I want to give them the opportunity to, number one, know what the thing was. Because it's like, especially in this like preteen, teen life thing, it's like their brains are so filled with it every day. They hear it, 7 hours a day in the bus, at school, on television, wherever. And so to come back and then expect that to not be what comes out of them at me is like a virtual impossibility. So to give them the chance to build the opposite habit is like what I'm aiming at, I guess is what I mean to say.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, I can't believe it, but we made it through all 9 questions that we wrote together. Yeah. All right. I learned a lot from you all. Thank you so much. And someday I'm sure I'll apply it in various ways in my life, even in my own attitude and my own behavior, parenting myself, as we all have to do. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time with us. And I hope that I see a number of you have been watching. Feel free to add your comments, and I hope that you'll all come back and be guests again.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was really nice meeting you ladies, and thank you for sharing your ideas. I learned many things.
It was really nice meeting you. You had a lot of amazing perspective, and I like how you really take a lot of time to think about the psychology of everything and give your kids vocabulary for their feelings, and that's really powerful. That's really cool.
Cheers, everybody.